Today we'll be talking about AWS specialized domains around application, IoT, and simulation. Okay, that's what we'll be talking about today. So what we'll learn, we'll look at Amplify and how that helps with full stack application development. Very powerful tool in the hands of developer, right? AppStream, we'll see AppStream, we'll see WorkSpaces, and then we'll see IoT Core, which is for Internet of Things. If you want to do, billions of connectivity. We'll see Device Farm for mobile application testing. We'll see AWS Pinpoint for customer engagement. We'll see Ground Station, and then we'll see fault injection, like the AWS fault injection simulator, which is for Charles engineering. I think for some people, if you don't know the term, we'll talk about it. But if you are obviously if you are like in the cloud DevOps realm, it's a thing like saying Charles engineering. Okay, I call it chaos engineering, but maybe it's chaos engineering. Okay, so it depends. So let's start with workspace. I'm not going to dwell much on workspace, but I'll just explain it in a way that you understand. If you notice, like, if you've worked in a corporate place before, especially tech-related companies or even just normal companies, usually they'll give you a laptop, right? They'll give you a physical laptop for you to use. But remember, if you think about how the cloud solves many of the problems we've seen, it's virtual. They solve it in a virtual manner, right? We've seen routers that we're configuring virtually. We've seen machines that we don't really touch, but we're also configuring them virtually, right? We've seen networks that we're just configuring, right? We don't really see the cables, we don't see all these things, but we've been able to configure networks, right? That works, that establishes real connection between one place, one availability zone to another availability zone, even if we didn't really see the physical things that were doing the real connection. And that's the same way I would introduce workspace to you. So usually if you go to a company, I'm sure they'll give you a laptop, right? They'll give you a laptop for you to use, right? They call it office laptop, work laptop and all that. So in AWS, there's AWS WorkSpaces, and it's just a managed desktop as a service. Just what it means is that instead of someone giving you a physical laptop, you can get a desktop that is in the cloud, right? So it's just like your own workstation, right? But you don't need to physically carry the machine all around. You can basically just use a client to connect to the desktop, and then so it's persistent, which means that you can treat it. You treat it just like the normal laptop. You can log off, log on, and your work will still remain, right? So and you can access it from anywhere. And just the way you move your laptop or your personal computer, work computer around, you can do that same. You can do it also with AWS Workspace, right? Supports Windows, Linux, desktop environment. So the whole idea is your organization is going to create like a desktop, and then you can connect, right? So it means that probably the admin is going to go through all the installation, make sure that especially the things that you need, right? And then you can also even take that further and do more things, right? Because you start more or less like with a particular OS, which can be customized to your taste, and then your users can obviously use it, right? So because Windows is involved, you can obviously use Active Directory. I think if you know Active Directory, you can use it to manage your users, right? So you can use your existing Active Directory on AWS Workspace. Flexible pricing is one of the key features you're going to see around it. There's also multiple bundles that you'll see. So it depends on how you want to set up your workspace, right? It depends. For a tech company, for example, that is setting workspace, and for a place that is non-tech, maybe their requirements will differ, right? Encryption is obviously most of the services we've seen. AWS will always give you a way for you to do protection around whatever you're doing. So the root volume, you can have an encryption around it. And then multi-factor authentication and compliance support. So the point is that you can get a workspace, and that workspace is just similar as your computer. It's just that it's not physical device that you see. It's a computer that is in the cloud, but that you can use. It's like your own personal space, but it's in the cloud, right? So there's not much I'm going to say about it, because most corporates, some very, very big organizations will set up workspace for you, and then you just need to connect to it and then basically use it like you use your physical laptop, right? So when you not think about it, there's a broader, like there is like when you think about workspace, then you're thinking about AppStream, right? And sometimes you wonder what's the difference. So one is a full desktop. The other one, in this case, is AppStream, to stream application, right? So that's That's the only thing you need to understand mostly about the two of them. One is really a full desktop that's given to you, but AppStream is basically a streaming service for delivering desktop applications. So in this case, the applications are already installed for you, and then you can stream that application from wherever you connect, right? So in as much as you have like a web browser, you can stream those applications. So the whole idea is that it's one way for you to just administer apps to your to your, in this case, maybe to your employees or to your organization, right? Such that, let's think about it. Maybe you have AutoCAD, or you have some certain apps that you want to use. You don't want everybody to be installing theirs on their own physical machine. You can use AppStream to set up AutoCAD or set up all those apps that you use and stream it to your staffs or to your employees. So stream applications from AWS, because AppStream, you host it in AWS, and then you can use that to stream the apps to your users, right? No need to install the application, so the users themselves will not really need to install this application we're talking about. And then someone is obviously doing like decentralized, application management and security. And if you think about it, it's just the fleet is managed for you. So fleet management with auto scaling capability. So you are not worried to you're not worried that you're going to lack resources, right? Because everything is made available to you. User session. So if, for example, if I am logged in and I'm trying to stream app, that session is mine, and there will also be persistence, right? And I have my own folders that I can use. As with Workspace is also integrated with Active Directory. Okay, Active Directory is obviously a thing, especially for large enterprises who probably they have like an existing directory and they're trying to move to AWS. You can always reuse that, right, to set up your yeah, you can do application entitlement, and then you can also do usage analytics to see how you're using stuff, right? So you can have multiple instance types for different application requirements, right? So if you're setting a stream, you can set up one for maybe the tech people. You can set up one for non-tech. It just depends on how your organization is set up. But the whole idea is that you're setting up a set of applications that your users, in this case, or your clients, or I mean, it depends on what your setup is, or your employees will stream those applications, right? Without having to physically install it, okay, on their system. So just take note of it. Workspace, AppStream, they're not very complex AWS services, but they are very good, and they're mostly used around enterprise organizations. That brings me to a favorite topic, which is Amplify, which is one of the things we're going to see. So if you think about, I think there was a time in this call where we talked about Elastic Beanstalk, right? And we saw how Elastic Beanstalk was able to more or less like hide the complexities, right, of like having a VPC, not really a VPC, but like having a load balancer, setting up a target group, doing all that manually, right? We saw how Elastic Beanstalk was able to do that for us easily. That's the same way Amplify more or less like um, hides some of the complexity of working with some of the AWS services, and just puts, it's like a small framework where you can use to build um, um, do full stack development, right? For both web and mobile applications. And the whole idea is that if you're like a web or mobile application developer, maybe in some cases you just care about, I need a database, or I need an API, or you don't really care about the underlying implementation, right? You're not infra focused, right? On this call, we are infra focused. We are focused on the cloud. But sometimes you're also looking for a solution where you can just build, you can deploy, you can host your applications, without really um, bothering yourself that much about the how it is happening. Like because if you think about it, since we started this class, we've been setting up our own cloud front, we've been setting up our own load balancers, we've been creating DynamoDB tables, but what if you wanted to just have an application that uses all that, and you're more or less like not putting attention on the all those details are abstracted away from you, right? And that's one thing Amplify can do for you. It can actually simplify that entire process, where you can choose, you want a database, a DynamoDB table is created for you in the back end, or you say you want an API, and then AppSync or Grab, AppSync can be created for you, just like we've seen. We saw AppSync at some point ago, but we were seeing it that like we were interacting with it directly, right? But here, all that can be bundled using Amplify. And then you can have CI/CD pipeline with Git-based workflow. We've built our own CI/CD, right? But Amplify can also it can pretty much simplify that process, where you don't need to do a lot to just get your CI/CD running for your application, right? So backend services, when you think about the key features, it has authentication, API is one of the things you need for an application. Storage is there, databases are there. These are typical application needs, and Amplify just makes it easy for you, right? So hosting with global CDN and custom domain, you can have your own custom domain and a CDN. There is like you can get an admin UI for you to do backend management and then content modeling also. Like with every application, you have like a data store for offline applications with real-time sync. Real-time sync would obviously happen through AppSync that we've seen before, but you can do a lot. So analytics and monitoring is also something you can do with user engagement inside. So the point is that Amplify is more or less like trying to it's a framework. I see it as a framework in AWS, or like a service in AWS that you can use and that can more or less like offload many of the low level infra stuff that you would have been doing, right? And then you can treat your application exactly for what it is. Like you're focused on just building the application, and then Amplify can really get you started on the things around authentication, APIs, storage, databases, without you going low level with those things, right? So let's see what Amplify looks like in the UI. That one should be easy to show. So let's go to Amplify. So I'll show you. We'll be working with a demo. It's not me. I just did create a copy of the repo. I just copied it over. So this is CCP that I did create a fork of this one. So if I open it, it's just a template, right? It's a well-known template. So AWS samples is something you also get used to as time goes on, where you can see samples in terms of whether it's machine learning, whether it's most things. If you go to AWS samples, you see a lot of things, right? In this case, I'm looking at an Amplify view template, right? So it's here, and this is the application we're going to host. I mean, if you're familiar with Vue.js, no, this is actually React. So if you're familiar with React, many of these things here. So let's go into, for example, the public. No, this is obviously static. So let me go to source. So if you do app, okay, sorry, this is Vue. This is Vue.js. I don't know how many of you know Vue.js, but Vue.js is basically just it's like a framework also, right? Where you can use it to host apps. So we have this amplified Vue template here, and this is like the home page. So what we saw just now is the home page. There's like the main page that just basically mounts the app itself, right? And then in there is also like there is like an Amplify folder where you have like many of the Amplify packages that you're using. And then there is pretty much, in our own case, there was a time we did build spec.yaml, we did app spec.yaml, but there's also amplify.yaml. And here is obviously doing like a build phase, there's like a front end where you do build, these are really, if you want to take Amplify, like if you want to go low level to understand the things that are happening. But what I'm just saying is that, number one, this is a Vue app, and then you just add some things that are unique to Amplify, and then your application is up and running inside of AWS. So let's see what that will look like. So I'm just going to go here and type Amplify. I'm just going to go to Amplify, and let's see what it says. Let's see Amplify and see what it says. So AWS Amplify, let me zoom in a bit. You can see ship full stack apps fast, right? So it means you have the app, you don't need to care so much about, and you can see the popular frameworks it supports. This is React, this is Vue.js, which is the one we're going to host, but there are so many other ones, both mobile and this is Angular, mobile and web applications, right? There's a lot, but just know that it's basically everything you need to build and deploy web and mobile apps, right? So let's deploy a sample app. So what we are going to do is that we would say we want to create a new app, and here it's going to ask me deploy your app. You can see it's telling me some of the apps that I can deploy, and then I'm going to say that to deploy an app from Git provider, select one of the options. In my own case, I want to use the GitHub. Here you can do select without Git if you have your app, but you can also do start template. And if you do start template, that's how it gets that repo that you saw. But in my own case, I've already taken a copy of the repo, right? But you can also go here and start. Just do next. Next.js is React. Vue.js is different, Angular, and then there is also Vue. So in this case, we're going to be doing Vue.js. But just remember that here I've taken a copy of the application that we want to host. Okay. But what it just means is that in your own case, if you had like a Vue.js application, you just need to add the part that relates to Amplify. So there's like an Amplify folder here. There's like amplify.yaml. So there are just some other little things that you need to configure, right? But the point is that if I go here and I do GitHub, I'm just going to do next. Oh, I think there is a page that I did open that I closed. Let me try and open it again. No, I think, yeah. So you can see select, it did show me my repo, right? And, it showed me my repo. So just so you remember, and if you remember all the time we did code pipeline, we connected our repo. So I've already done that. So what I'm saying is that if you do deploy an app and you do start with a template, you just need to link it to the same repo that I shared before. But again, I think to make it easy, you have to create a copy of it because you have to authenticate against your own GitHub repo, which is what I've done. So in my own case, I'm just going to go GitHub. I'll do next. It's going to, I think it will do this, right? It will show us this page. But because I've already connected my repo, it's going to work. So and then I'm just going to select the repo that I showed you. The branch is main, and then I'm just going to go next, right? Now it sees front-end build command is npm run build, build output directory is dist. Dist is very common if you do front-end stuff, right? So if I do edit YAML file, you can see this is the exact YAML file that we had there, right? So the amplify.yaml, and this is the file. So it has all the instruction. Just the same way we had, like I think I've said it, we had build spec, and then the build spec, app spec for build spec for code for code deploy, app spec for build spec for code build, app spec for code deploy. There's also amplify.yaml for amplify, right? So in this case, I'm not going to do anything for service role. It will create a new service role that is going to use. There are advanced things that I can specify here, but I'm just going to leave the default, and then I'm going to do next. So it says, this is exactly what I want to do. This is the advanced settings. I'm not touching any of those, and I'm just going to deploy. That's it. So I'm just going to click on deploy. So the point is that, so this is where it becomes very interesting. You can see it says updating CDK CloudFormation stack, right? So if you are already someone who understands AWS already, this becomes easy to you because you know that outside the application, you kind of have an idea of what it's going to be doing. So let's try and keep track of what it's trying to do. We've seen CDK before, right? We've seen CDK, right? We know CDK will bootstrap it to start creating CloudFormation resources. So let's go to CloudFormations and have an idea of what Amplify is trying to do on our behalf, right? So you can see the toolkit is being created, right? This is the same toolkit you will do when you do Bootstrap, right? So it's going to create this toolkit. Let's give it some time. I know this is going to take some time, but honestly, at this point, it's just doing all the staging bucket. It's creating a staging bucket, creating a CDK Bootstrap version. All this is we've seen this in CDK when we're doing CDK, right? So this is complete. So I want to expect now to start creating the stack that is unique to in this case the Amplify needs. So if I refresh this, let's see, we just need to give it time. It looks like now it's deploying. So so I want to believe that there's actually something that has been written in CDK that is being executed on our behalf, right? But the bootstrap was needed for that to happen. So what we have here is the bootstrap is already done, and then it's deploying the application. So let's see. Let's give it some time. It says it's doing this, and then there's a URL. It says your app will appear here once you complete your first deployment, right? But the deployment hasn't finished, so we're just going to let me do view nested. Let me see in progress. I'm actually trying to see if there is a different stack entirely that is being created on our behalf. But let's just give it time. Let's give it time. Maybe this. Let's give it time. So we'll do refresh. Let's see if there is like a place to do monitoring, app settings, build notifications, and you can do more things, right? You can set up notifications for your builds, and there are many more things. Just so you know, like we've seen, right? Sometimes many of these things are abstractions, right? But some people just know exactly what they want, right? They know how they can set up their CDN to connect to the S3 bucket or whatever whatever setup they have. In some cases it works. In some cases it works for you, right? But these can get you started quickly. So maybe you don't want to stress yourself trying to, do infra as code, set up all these, do like creating all the DynamoDB tables, doing all the, Amplify can just give you a very simplified way of you creating those resources, but you are application focused. But behind the scene, many other things are being created for you to have your serverless application running quickly, right? So we'll go back to overview. It's still deploying, so we're just gonna give it time. Yeah, I think I was just being impatient, but you can see the stacks are being created, right? And this is where you begin to appreciate some of the skills you have learned, right? Because now I know a stack is being created. The question is, if I go into the stack, what kind of resources are there? You can see, for example, these are obviously nested stuff, but sometimes it's good to have an idea. Remember, we don't control. You don't control these things. You basically just use Amplify to decide what you want, but Amplify in the background is going to create all the things that you need, right? So, and there's like a nested stack. I think we've talked about it. Usually in CloudFormation, there's stack. You can have nested stack inside, and then when we're talking about like sharing outputs or exporting output, this is the reason, because when you have nested stack, they might use output from another stack, right? But these things will begin to make sense because, for example, you can go here and then begin to see, okay, authorization is creating an Amplify auth. It means it's creating a user pool, it's creating a client, it's creating a bunch of things, right? And these things, obviously, if I go to my, if I go to user pool, right? If I go to user pool, let me do Cognito actually. So I'll do Cognito, and then I'm going to go here. I'll go to Cognito. The point is that if you understand these things on your own, right, it becomes easy. You can just use Amplify to more or less like speed your process, right? But the good thing is that you already know. Maybe some of these things you don't want to stress yourself in doing it. But the thing is, you can obviously have like a user pool. There's a client that has been created, and that is already going to provide authentication for the application, right? Let's see what other things it's creating for us. So let's see. There's nothing fancy in there. What other things you can imagine? So many more stacks are coming up. So let's see this stack. What else is here? This is also Amplify data. GraphQL is creating a GraphQL for us. What else? What about this one? It's creating a data. I think we saw a directory. So if you see it, all that is being created from the Amplify directory. There is data. There is auth. Auth is going to use Cognito, like we've seen. Data is going to use, where you want to store data, for example, like DynamoDB. So if you go to CloudFormation, you see that all that is being created. So if you do table, for example, if I check this one, there is a role. All this is basically, what do you call it? These are all Amplify, but if you go deeper, you will see the things it's creating, and some of the things are things you already know, right? So for here, it's doing to do, but let's go and see DynamoDB. Let's see if it created like a DynamoDB table, right? So, but the point is that it's a fast way where you just focus on your application, and Cognito can help you more or less like sort out the other. Amplify can help you, set up the other things without you stressing. In this case, let me see if there is a table. Yes, there's a table that was created, like a to-do table that was created. It's ready. DynamoDB table is ready for us to go, and then let's see if the application itself is ready. So we're just going to do, it's going to take time. So it's going to take time. It's still going to take its time because like we are following the stack because we have an idea that, okay, there is like a stack being created, but all of them is complete. So we'll just look at them and see some things are here. Let's see if it's still loading. Yeah, the app is here, right? So you can see just from here, not much is here actually. And from here, you already have a full stack application that was already setting up the DynamoDB, setting up the authentication, using Cognito. I mean, you can set all that yourself, right? But think about it. If you want to do prototyping, you want to move very fast, you want to just deploy, you can basically use Amplify to do all that, right? Which is what we've seen. So the app is here. We can test it. We can say hello, hello world, right? So that's exactly what it's asking from us. We've done that. Hello world. What do you think is going to be in the DynamoDB table? So obviously, I mean, if you don't know DynamoDB table, if you don't know DynamoDB before, maybe you'll not appreciate Amplify. If you don't know CloudFormation, there's some things you'll not appreciate about Amplify. But I'm happy that we've gone through some of those steps to understand some of these things. So many of these things we can relate with them, right? You definitely know you can do exploitable items. You can obviously see this is the hello world that we created from the UI, right? So this is here. You can go back and be like, I think obviously in the front end there's no place to to currently log in. Second, let's call this second to do, right? So we can do this second to do. The good thing about it is that all the things it uses, they're all serverless. All right. So if I refresh this, you see the second one is there. All right, cool. So what it means is that we went from GitHub to just a full deployment in just a matter of, and if you see this GitHub repo, it's not much. The same thing, you can have like samples that tells you exactly how to get started with React, and then you can begin to pipe in the things that you want. If you are like front end, if you whether you're full stack, or you can actually just um, handle the infra part while the front end people focus on like building the React or the Vue.js app, right? Cool. So that's really what I wanted to share on Amplify. Just while we're here, we're just going to go back and delete the app. That's really it. There is nothing much. It's Amplify just makes full stack development very easy, right? But remember, behind the scene, it is creating a lot of the AWS resources that we've seen, and you appreciate it if you have an idea of those things. But I mean, if you also want to get started, yes, you can just use Amplify, and it helps you to abstract many of those details out, right? And then you can just treat your application, focus on your application, while Amplify will do many of the heavy lifting for you. Okay. So we'll just go back to, so this is the app, it's there, it's working. We'll just go back, and it's very simple. We have this application that is here. Um, so this one is the one we just deployed. We can basically just, where is it now? Um, let's see, this is branches. Obviously, you can do multiple branches, right? So you can do like multiple branches. You can do CI/CD, and I think this is the UI manager I was telling you about, right? So there's like the data manager. You can have storage. I think I was too fast, but you can see even here you can create a table. You can do like create a to do. That would obviously do exactly what we're doing in the UI. Storage is there. There's just a bunch of things that you can see. So Amplify itself, you can take it as far as you want to take it, right? So we won't dwell too much on it. So let's just go to all apps. So we have this app. Let's go back. So app settings, general settings. If I have to go to app settings, general settings, and then I'll just do delete app, right? So what do you think if I do delete? What do you think is going to happen? It's basically going to use CloudFormation again, right? Because we've seen CloudFormation as a very good way of avoiding having to do manual clickups, right? So if I do delete app, I'm very sure that it's going to go back and start tearing down the stack, right? So you see branch main not found, deleted this app is going. So if I go back to CloudFormation, I believe a delete is already in progress. This we've seen, right? We've seen this. So it just begins to appreciate where we've come from, how we've gotten to where we are right now. Because sometimes there are a lot of services in AWS that can abstract so many things, right? Like I think I did mention, for example, Elastic Beanstalk, how it abstracts a lot of things. But many of the things Elastic Beanstalk abstracts are things we've done manually. So it's fine sometimes if you want to use Elastic Beanstalk, right? But the most important thing, the things Elastic Beanstalk is abstracting for you, more or less. Like, and the same with Amplify, because it's going to create a table, create Cognito. But if you know these services individually, it's easy for you to troubleshoot, go there and check if something is not working, or and that's it. So basically, delete is complete. It's going to try to delete all the other stacks. So we'll just give it time. It's going to delete. But if I go and refresh this app, it's going to be gone. If I go back to, it's going to take a while for that to go because it's still tearing down stuff. But let's see. What about this? The table is gone. If I go to DynamoDB and I go to tables, no more table again. Okay, cool. So let's give the stack some time to delete this stuff. There's a lot we need to do today on IoT. So let me move on the slide so that we can actually get through that. Okay. So let's continue. So we've just seen Amplify, right? A very good way for you to build a full stack application. Without you, in case you have developers who are they don't really want to care so much about the infra. They just want to bootstrap and do a lot of. So this is a very good tool for them, right? Good. Let's not talk about Device Farm. Device Farm is something that is also a service, basically. What does it do? Application testing. There's just everything. There's everything in the cloud that you can ever think about. But the whole idea is that you know how it is. Like if you in the real world, mobile applications, when you build them, usually sometimes you want to test them across different kinds of phones, different kinds of versions of the app, right? Because the way your application is going to behave in iPhone 14 might be different from how it behaves in iPhone 15, right? So that's where Device Farm comes in. So you can actually use AWS in this case, get so many devices and test your mobile applications, right? So application testing service for mobile and web applications, test on real devices in AWS infrastructure. That means what you're actually testing, using to test, is their real devices. The same real devices that you know is what you're testing against. And there, instead of you going to buy devices, why not use one that is already available in the cloud and makes your work fast and easy, right? Automated testing with built-in and custom test framework. It means, yeah, because usually how people test, just like how we test too, like if you were using your laptop, there's usually like a framework people are using. But the good thing is that it's all built in. You can use Device Farm to do all that easily, right? So remote access to devices for manual testing and debugging. So the point is that there is a service in AWS called Device Farm, and I think I've also mentioned AWS tries their best to name things very well. So just think about it. It's a farm where you can use many devices to test. If you have like an application you want to test, and you wanted to leverage AWS to use so many devices to test that application to see how they will behave across different devices and different versions. Yeah, that's where Device Farm comes in, right? So large free fleet of real Android and iOS devices, right? So it's not just about Android and iOS. It's also about the phone that is running. Sometimes you want to see how it's going to display on this phone when you compare it to this one, right? Um, and then automated testing with those are all some of the frameworks that you can use. You can do parallel testing, right? Just to hasten up your to get a faster result. And then you can get detailed test reports with screenshots, videos, and you can even get logs, right? You can do a CI around it. We've seen what CI and CD is in many of these classes that we've gone through in this series, right? So integration with your CI/CD pipelines for continuous testing. Because I mean, the way we treat infra, how we go through the development cycle for infra, is how some people go through development cycle for application dev, and it's how some people do the same with mobile application development, right? So everyone has their own, but what it means is that the same hassle that you would have gone through to test how to behave in this device versus this device, you can just go to the cloud and just get a number of devices that you can test with, right? Which is cool and very very useful, right? That brings me to Pinpoint. So I won't dwell on Pinpoint. Pinpoint is already good. I think AWS has discontinued it, but I'm going to talk about it, show you in the console that it's no longer a thing. I'm only introducing it here so that you just know there was a time it was a thing. Yeah, it was. And I think we've seen SNS. We've used SNS extensively. In fact, in this call, we're still going to use SNS when we get to IoT. Um, but you know that SNS, you can obviously subscribe your emails, you can subscribe many things to it. But when you really wanted to do customer engagement, right? You wanted to do more or less like create, campaigns. Pinpoint was really that place where you could do all those things. So it's an customer engagement service for targeted messaging, right? We usually just create subscription. We create an SNS topic, we subscribe a user, and then we send SMS. But if you actually wanted to create more or less like a place where you could have targeted, and you can more or less like have a set of people, you can send messages to them and do more or less like an engagement. Pinpoint was that tool, right? Multiple channel, so email, SMS, push, voice, you could do all that, right? So you could do customer journey with campaign management. Like I said, you can have individual campaigns for the different groups of people that you have, and then that's where you see a lot of analytics, right? Insights for how your messaging are doing when you send them out. And then you can do so many of the key features: audience segmentation. So you can do you can have different audience, right? You can do potential customers versus customers that are already with you, and then you can use all that to send targeted messages out, right? And you can also do A and B testing for message optimization and engagement, just more or less like to see how different messages are behaving when you compare them with the audiences that you're sending it to, right? So real-time personalization with dynamic content is one thing you can do with Pinpoint easily, right? SNS, for the most part, you're sending something but here you can actually have templates that sends, how those rich emails are. You can do all that with Pinpoint. So I'm not going to dwell so much on it because, like I said, Pinpoint is gone. Like it's no longer available for new customers. So I'm just going to go to the console just to show you what it looks like. So that if you hear Pinpoint somewhere, you know that at one time it was like I mean, some customers are still using it till date. It's just that it's not open to new customers again. So if I do go to Amazon Pinpoint, I'm just going to show you. So automatic campaigns and journey to send customers the right message. So you can see the most important here is October 30th, it will stop being a thing. So it's no longer on it was, after October 30th, which is next year, and it's no longer going to be accessible for, I think, we'll end support for this, yeah. So after 30th of September, October next year, you will not be able to use it again. But I think it's even no longer available for, like, I think new account. I think I did see it somewhere. Yeah, because this my account. I think this one is old, but like my new account, I couldn't really do anything. Um, so in this case, yeah, yeah, I can't even do anything. You can see there's nothing. So when I clicked on, before you could have like message templates, but it's saying it's it's no longer open to Amazon Pinpoint is no longer open to new customers, so we can't really do anything with it, right? But just know it's there. Maybe you're lucky if it's in your account, you can try something. But if it's no longer available for new customer, and what it just means is that maybe it's not something you should focus on again, because the service is already living, right? As with many innovations that you see in the cloud, some service will come and some service will leave, right? Cool. So let's go back to the slide, because that's we're going to be talking about something that I really want to stress, talk a bit more today. So Pinpoint, that's pretty much it. You can use it for customer engagement, right? If you really wanted to. So we'll be doing IoT, and I'm passionate about this one because I just feel we're in a world right now where AI is becoming a thing. There is more need for you to get data, but sometimes when you think about it, data collection is a major challenge, right? Sometimes you want to get data from different places, like especially from places that maybe like your remote locations where you can't take a laptop to, and you just want to take a small, a very mini device, right? That's where IoT comes in. Pretty much they call it Internet of Things. But the whole idea is that it's a managed cloud service for you to do Internet of Things. The whole idea is that you can have very small devices that you can connect, so many running in billions, that you can connect to your AWS services. The whole idea is that from there you can do anything, whether you're like in a place where you're collecting information real time, and then you're streaming all that information to your AWS cloud. You can do anything with it. It's either it depends. It really depends on what you're doing, right? You can obviously do bi-directional. You're sending message, your device is receiving message, or you're just using those devices to collect message. It could be you're using it to train a machine learning model, or regardless of, it depends. It just depends on your use case, right? So you secure bi-directional communication between devices and the cloud. There is a registry. You create authentication. You create authorization. Um, and then we'll see all that just in a second. But it obviously supports the MQTT protocol. That's like one of the popular protocols for you to work with IoT devices. Um, Device shadow is something you can use for keeping the persistent, like keeping track of the persistent device state. You will see rule engine. The whole idea is that even while your IoT messages are coming to your AWS platform, you can set up rules that would use those messages, and then depending on something, it will take an action on your behalf, right? And then you can do searching and monitoring device. So you can monitor it. We're talking about so many devices, right? So there is a way you can actually see your fleet. You can search, you can monitor them. And then you can also do like send remote configuration using IoT jobs. Many of these things are complex. They're like advanced usage, right? But we are just going to scratch the surface just to show you that it's a thing. So I'm going to go to IoT. I'm going to go to IoT and show you what that looks like. So IoT. So I'm going to go to IoT. IoT. So there is IoT Core, there is IoT Events. There's IoT Analytics. The one I'll be focusing on is IoT Core, right? So I'm going to go here. So what I'm going to be doing here is, first of all, it's here. So securely connect, test, and manage your IoT devices. Remember, IoT can be it depends on the device. It could be a light bulb, it could be your sensor, it could be anything, right? So let's create our first device. So I'm going to go to things, and before that, I'm going to create a policy, and that's where I'll start from. So I'm going to create a policy because I need it. So I'm going to create a policy. I'll create one policy. Here I'll just call it IoT policy. Right, so I'll leave tags as empty for now. Allow policy action star. So for now, because I don't want to policy resource, maybe I'll just create this one and say, or do JSON. So that I'll do star. Right. So here, I mean, you can tune this further if you wanted, but here, just to simplify the test we are going to do, I'm just going to create this policy, meaning it has permission to do everything. Okay. So I'm now going to create a thing. Let's create so in IoT, a theme is basically an IoT device, right? So in this case, I want to create something. Maybe it's a light bulb. Maybe it's a sensor that is sending me response or sending me events. So I'm just going to go create a single thing, and I'm going to call it my sensor. That's really what I'm going to call it. So I'll call it my sensor. So I'll call it this thing type, searchable attributes. I'm just going to leave all that, right? Some of these things are not something I want to. Or to generate a new certificate, I need that. I need the certificate for me to be able to connect to that device. So I'll say yes. I'm going to use this policy as the policy for the thing, and then I'm going to create a thing. It tells me that these are all the certificates I need. For now, I'm just going to download all, right? So I'll just download them. They're all going down to my local machine. So I've downloaded them. I'll just do done, right? So I have my sensor. So it means you have a device, right? Once you have a device, what's the next logical step? You have to connect to the device, right? So in this case, the device needs to be connected to AWS. Um, um, Remember, like this sensor at the end of the day, you have to connect your this sensor is more or less like the one in the cloud, right? But there is a physical device that would have to connect to this sensor and push information to it, right? So we've created the one that is the one that is in the cloud, right? That will recognize the sensor. But we now need to connect to it and use it. I more or less like link this to a particular device that is pushing the message. So I'm going to go to CloudShell. That's how I'm going to do it. CloudShell. So I'll go to CloudShell. And in CloudShell, I'm just going to open a new environment. So I'm just going to open, it's going to just open a new environment, right? So just whatever I'm just using CloudShell in this case as a test. Remember, we always make it easy and just use CloudShell. But just think about it. Ideally, this is supposed to be like a sensor now connecting to AWS, trying to do all those things, right? So what I'm going to do is that I have a set of little handy command that I'm going to be pasting, right? So the first one is basically I'm creating like a virtual environment. So if you know Python, this is just virtual environment, and I'm activating it, right? So it's a Python 3 environment. I've activated it. So I can actually at this point do Python, just Python version 3.9, right? So what I'm going to do is that I'll do git clone. So the thing is that there is like a version, so online, you can actually see AWS samples online, right? You can see this one, this like a Python SDK that you can use for you to. So I'm going to clone that and see what it looks like. Already exists. It looks like I already have all these. So I'm just going to do, I think I don't need anything here. So I'm just going to do this. Let me do, what is here? Okay, so yeah, so we're back to empty. So I'm here, it's empty slate. I'm just now going to clone it again. Okay, so I'm just cloning a sample. We'll start with a sample, then I'm going to adapt it to what I want us to do. So I've done that. I think one of the most important steps you have to do is you have to install the, what do you call it? You have to install the IoT device SDK Python, right? So I'm just going to install that one. It's installed. So once it's installed, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do CDK. I'm going to CD to AWS samples, and then I'll just go in there, and then I'm going to list samples. So I'll do this. I'll do so there's like a pops up Python version, right? So the thing is that what I want to do now is I have a device online and that is already in the cloud, and I want to use pops up to reach that device, right? It already is an example they have that is working, but I'm going to adapt it. Okay, well, we have an example. So I'm just going to do, so the first thing I need to do is to upload the certificates that we did create. So I'm just going to do upload files. I don't know if you can see this clearly, but let me bring it down a bit so that you can see. So I'm just going to upload files. I don't know where I did put those files, but this is all of them, right? Let me see. It looks like this is okay. I'm just going to bring them over. I think, which one do I need? I basically need this one, the PEM. I need which one do I need now? Okay, I need this one, and then I need the private PEM, right? So I need the private PEM, I need the SAT. Oh, can't even allow me bring all of them once. But let me just see. So it's giving me the CRT. I'm going to also upload the key. Remember, I just downloaded these ones just now, right? So I'm just going to do the private. Yeah, pretty much. I think those are the things that I need. Too many requests. I'm going to try it again. I'm just going to upload that file now. Okay, so I'm going to do upload. This is the key, the one that I just downloaded. Remember, I downloaded the certificate, right, from that for that thing. So if I do ls, it's here. Nope. It's if I do ls of home, yeah, it's here. So it was actually saved in my home directory, right? And that's exactly what it said here. It said home CloudShell user. That's where it put it. So now what's next? I basically, once I have that, I have a handy command here that says, I'm just going to use this, their own pub sub example. So what I'm going to do for their pub sub example is that I'm going to do, let me first do Python and do pub sub, pub .py and see what I get. So it looks like it needs a key, it needs a SAT, and then what else? Yeah, so it needs a SAT and a key, and then an endpoint, right? Which is what I have. So I'm just going to take all that. So I'm just going to, just to make it fast, I'm just going to do, let me just list those certificates. So I have this .crt, I need it. Let me just paste it here. .crt, replace it with, don't worry, I'm going to bring what I have. This is B5, right? Okay, correct. And then this one is also .pem. I don't even know if it's the same thing. They look very similar, but let's see. So I'm going to do Control F. And don't worry, I'm going to paste what I'm using now. So what I'm just going to do is I have it. I'm just going to copy the command that I have here. So I'll do paste. So when you look at the command, it says you cannot open that file. That's another thing. No such file. Let's see. Okay, I think I know why. I think I know why. Okay, let's try it again. Then I'm going to show you what the command is. Okay, cool. So what is the command? The command is really, I'm using, remember in this case, okay, I think I'm supposed to do pub sub.py, right? So I'm just going to do Control C. I'm just going to clear my screen, okay? And then paste the right command. Remember that I'm doing ls. If you do ls, there's a pub sub.py. We're using their own example. And then I'm going to paste what I want to do. So in this case, I'm saying Python pub sub. The endpoint is this, and the IoT endpoint. I'm using the key that I got from the theme, and I'm also using the SAT, right? So let's try and execute this. So it did publish. So you can see test topic, test topic. So in this case, it is doing a pub and a sub, right? It's publishing and it's also subscribing, right? So that's why we might not immediately see the power, right? So which is why I will try to adapt this script to just do only publishing so that we can actually see it in real, because this one is doing pub and sub. But if I actually go into things and I go to the, what do you call it? So I'm going to go to test, the test client. So there's actually a place here where you can see, for example, maybe I can subscribe. So in this case, okay, we're actually not seeing, but if you see, it's actually publishing to a test topic, right? So let me even see if I can actually subscribe to it here. So if I do paste the topic and I subscribe to it, let me see if I can we do this side by side? Let me see if I can. But let me just do publish and see. It's pushing again. It's pushing, is sending. But you can see actually on the right, we are actually receiving the messages. Remember, this is me working with the exact example that is in the that is from AWS sample, right? But here I'm going to adapt it. I'm just going to adapt it. So think about it. We were doing pub sub here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clear this and create my own file. So I'm going to do nano, and then I'm just going to call it publish. So I'll call it publisher. So just for us to see them individually. So in this case, I'm just going to work with the publisher alone. So I'm going to do publish, I just want to make sure, publisher.py, right? So I'll create that, and then I have a publisher that I'm going to use. So I have a publisher here. It's a very simple publisher, right? But it still uses the same elements of the things that we've seen. So I'm just going to paste it, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like. So it's basically, it's going to post to a test topic. It's going to start the client. So the client is basically our thing in this case. And then for each of them, it's just going to send message and count and timestamp, and it's going to wire all that, right? So I'm just going to say. So what I'm now going to do is that I'm going to more or less like, so I'm going back to my test client, and then here I'm going to clear. So I'll clear it so we don't have anything. And now I'm just going to do publish, only publishing, right? I'm not going to do pub and sub from a client side. Rather, I'm just going to publish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to run this script. So in this case, I'm just going to do the same command basically. So the same command that I did put up there is what I'm going to run. The only difference is that if you see it, I'm now calling my publisher file that I created. So publisher, the endpoint is the same, the key is the same, and the SAT is the same. So in this case, but before that, I think I'm already subscribed here. So I'm just now going to start publishing. So you can see published hello from the count is 1, the count is 2, the count is 3, the count is 4, the count is 5. Let's go back and see. Was I really subscribed? Okay, so this is sending to demo topic, okay? The one that I'm doing now is sending to demo topic. The first one that we did was sending to test topic, so that's why we're not seeing anything. I'm just going to go back and subscribe again to a demo topic. So I'm going to go here and do demo, and then I'm going to subscribe. I think I can remove this test topic. I'm not doing anything with it. So here, I'm just going to start again. So I'm going to start publishing, okay? So if you publish the first message, second message, and then fourth, fifth message, right? And if I go back to my client here, you can see it. So this is the first one that was sent. So this is us faking, just more or less like faking it. But ideally, whatever I'm doing in CloudShell will be your actual device, right? That will be sending, communicating with the sensor. And this data, we'll see just now how we can take the data and already start doing meaningful things with some of the things we already know in AWS. So here you can see we are already publishing to the device, right? Good. So we're publishing already. So it's one way in this case. We're sending from a device here into AWS, and we're already seeing it. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So what we can also do is that we can also create a subscriber version of this, right? So what it means is that what I can do is I will just create a, so I'll do nano again, and then I'll do subscriber.py, right? Subscriber.py, and then I'm going to paste a subscription Python file that I already have. So it's just the reverse, right? So instead of publishing, I'm going to be subscribing, right? So in this case now, I'm subscribing. I'm trying to subscribe to whatever we have, right, in there. So what it means is that we already have that. We just now need to execute the subscriber. It's the same. Nothing is changing. It's just the file that I'm changing. So here I'm going to do, you can see I'm calling Python subscriber. The endpoint is the same. I didn't change that. I'm giving it a key, and I'm doing SAT is demo, right? So now I'm just going to do subscribe. Now I'm subscribing. So here the client now is subscribing, and it could be two ways, like we saw. It could be pub sub, right? But in this case, it is sub. So what do you think is going to happen if I go here? And because I'm already subscribed here, I can also just publish message, right? So publish, publish, right? Let's see what's going to happen. You can see, right? So from AWS, I'm already sending. Remember, I'm just testing this in CloudShell. This same example like this is going to work on my local machine. But the most important thing, you can see that there is a message that so it's two ways, right? I'm pushing and I'm also getting back, right? So I'm getting here, but I'm also pushing. So once that is done, what else? You would wonder what else can be done to this. We can do more things. So we can go back, we can switch back to what we had. So I'm going to clear this, and I'm just going to clear the screen and go back to publishing, right? But while before running the publishing again, I'm going to give it. I'm just going to wait. So what we can do is I'll go here to a new tab and go to what do you call it? I'm going to go to, where is it now? Message routing. Okay, so I'm going to create a rule. Just so you know, those messages are not useless. You can use them for powerful things, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to create SNS, create a topic. SNS is our friend because it's very easy for us to show things out. So I'm going to call it the IoT topic, right? And then just call it my IoT topic, right? Cool. So it's my IoT topic. I'm going to leave everything default like we've seen. And then for subscription, we need a subscription so that we can actually see what's happening in the SNS, in the topic. So I'm going to go here and create an email subscription. Let's look for 10 minutes email, right? So 10 minutes mail, it's here. We're just going to create one for ourselves. I'm going to copy this. So I'll copy it. Cool. And then create the subscription as the email. and then just create the subscription, right? Cool. So it's pending confirmation. After a while, I would have seen it. I'll confirm it, and then we should be good. So at this point, we have like a subscription that is subscribed already to the SNS. So I'm going to go to subscription. We have it here. Cool. Now that we have it there, what we can now do is that we can create a rule. A rule will say, because yeah, it's sending to the sensor, but we know that in AWS you can do more, right? You can take that same IoT device, whatever is coming into it, and then you can say, in this case, we're just going to create a simple rule. So we're going to say send to SNS, right? That's what we're going to call it. So send sensor info info to SNS, okay? And then we're just going to do next. In this case, I have a very simple SQL that I'm going to write. A very, very simple, right? It's one of the simplest SQL you can see, but I'm saying, select count from demo topic, because that's demo topic is really where I'm sending my subscription. So yeah, I'm saying select count from demo topic where the count itself is part of the message is greater than 4, right? And then what I'm going to do next. And then it's going to ask me rule action. Where's that rule going to go to? I'll tell it I need it to go to SNS. You can see many places, right, that you can go to from the IoT, right, for events that are coming to the IoT. So in this case, I'm going to type SNS. I'm going to type SNS, and then I have a topic, SNS topic, raw. I can leave that, or you can even use JSON if you want to. Here, I'm going to create a new role. So I'm going to call it IoT role, right? So I'm going to call it the IoT role. It has created the role. I'm going to view it. So it has created the role. I'm going to view the role. And now that I'm viewing the role, you can see it has no permission, right? So I'm going to add a permission, because I know IoT is going to assume this role, but if it assumes the role, it still needs to talk to SNS. So in this case, I'm going to do attach policy, and I'm just going to do SNS full access for now, right? But I know it just wants to publish message to SNS, so I'm going to use that. So I'm going to go back to creating my rule now. So here is the rule action. You can even have multiple rule action, right, that meets that condition. So in this case, go to SNS, use this topic, send it as is. I also want to add an error action just in case something goes wrong. I also want to be aware of it. So I'm going to do SNS. And then here, I'm also going to choose the same topic, and then just leave it as is. And then do the role that I just created is IoT role, right? Good. So just so you know, I think this is common stuff, but you know that this will be assumed by IoT and it has permission to reach SNS. Cool. So when that is in place, I'm just going to do next, right? So the rule is set up, and then I'm going to create. So think about it. We have a device. It's a thing, and that device actually maps to a device. In this case, we call it a sensor, and that sensor is publishing messages right now to that device. And we've just created a rule, and the rule is saying if the condition matches this, it's greater than 4, send message to this SNS. But we've also seen it's not just SNS. There are many places that you can wire that kind of information to, right? So what we're now going to do is that we're just going to go to IoT Core. So we're going to go back to CloudShell. So we're in CloudShell here. Remember, we had like a publisher version of it, and we're going to run the script. So in this case, let's also go to, let me see if I can actually break this a bit. Let me just see if I can split this a bit, just so that we can see two things side by side. I hope it's still clear enough, but it should be. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to open this to the left. Maybe that's not the one I wanted. So I actually wanted the one that has, where is it now? I think there was one we had the client that was connected. So I'm going to open that one. Where is it? Yeah, the test client. Remember we had the test client that was subscribed to it. So let's open that one on the left. You're just going to keep them side by side, sort of. So push this a bit to the side. We don't really need much real estate, right? So what it means is that I still need to subscribe again. So here is my demo topic. I'll subscribe to it, right? So it's on the right. I'm subscribing. And here is a device that is sending message to it. So I'm just going to do it real time. And you can see on the right, we are getting the message. The message is coming real time, like real time, right? It's here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So the thing is that we now need to check, did we get an email? Because we did set a rule. And then, yes, we actually got an email. You can see that it actually sent, we did an SQL that says, select the count. If the count is, it's a very simple example, but the point is that the SQL that we had, which is the rule, so let's go back to the rules. We had a rule set up here. The point is that it was a simple rule that we set. And the condition we said was that if you see something, select count from the whatever is published to demo topic. And if the count is greater than 4, wire it to this SNS topic, right? And that's why we could see that in this email, you can see that what was captured was count 5. And that's because if you look at the select, we only selected counts, right? So we took count out of it where the count is greater than 4, and that became equal to 5, which is exactly the message that you see here, right? So you can see, number one is these can be billions of devices, right? And they can all just be sending to AWS, and not just sending. You can also do real-time, rules that route events here and there. So that's like a very short introduction to IoT, right? There's many more things that you can do here, but the point is that when you combine IoT, you combine that to machine learning, you combine it to all the, especially when you need a lot of data, and especially if it's coming from small devices that you need to take to remote areas, IoT becomes very, very important. But some of the elements we've seen, you create a thing, you publish to the thing, and then from there you can also have rules that can route those things to different parts in AWS, right? The most important thing is for your data to get to AWS. Once it gets there, you can do many more things with it, because that's the whole idea, right? We know that if you were just to do that computation on-premise on your local environment, maybe it will be more, it will require more effort, right? But with AWS, it's just very easy for you to have that happen, and then you can tie it to your existing infra already. In this case, we just tested SNS, but it could be many other things, right? If it gets to SNS, you can push it to a queue, you can call Lambda function, you can do many things, right? Cool. That brings us to the end of this part. So what I'm just going to do on the left, what do I really need to do? I just basically need to delete the sensor, the thing that we added, right? So we're just going to go to all devices. We're going to go to things, and then I'm just going to get rid of it. So I'm just going to do delete. It's going to tell me there's a certificate linked to it. I don't mind. I'm going to get rid of it, and it's going to detach it. It's going to delete everything. So if I go to things, I no longer have my sensor again. What else did we create? We basically created an SNS topic that is supposed to get so this rule, obviously can delete it now because no one is using it. No, I think the rule is still using it. Let me see if there is still a rule there. There is a message rule, right? Remember? So message routing rules, there is one. So I'm just going to delete this one. Send to SNS, delete. And then I'm going to go to my IoT role. I can delete this one now. It's gone. What else did we create? We did create SNS. So I'm just going to delete the subscription. We added like a subscription that was to go to 10 minutes mail. That is gone. I'm just going to delete the topic. Cool. So at this point, we have been able to, just added a few service, right? And we got something working. Cool. Let's go back to the slide. So I'm going to expand this, and then we'll go back to the slide. So that's IoT Core. A very brief introduction to IoT Core, but there's more you can do with it. And that brings us to Ground Station. So it's the same. They are all the same. They're all kind of really, like if you look at Ground Station and you look at IoT, for example, it's still the fact that you have billions of devices that are out there in the villages, in small places, that basically just have tiny internet connectivity. You can push device, you can push, you can send messages to your cloud infrastructure. That's also the reason why you will need more or less like satellite data, right? Because some people, they're doing stuff and they need more or less like satellite information. But if you have to go through setting up the infrastructure for you to get that kind of data, it's going to be hard. And that's where Ground Station comes in. So it's a fully managed ground station service for satellite communication. The whole idea is that you would be using AWS Ground Station to gather data, right? To gather satellite data. So you can download satellite data directly to your infrastructure, right? And you know how it is. Once it gets to AWS, there's just so many things you can do to it, whether it's machine learning or whatever. There's just so many things you can do with it. So the global network of ground station antennas, obviously, you don't have to manage that. You don't have to buy one. You are just plugged into AWS Ground Station, and then you're set up and you're good to go, right? Everything is pay as you go, pricing for satellite contact time. So you're basically paying for usage. There is more to this, right? But just know that even for advanced use cases like this one, AWS has you covered. And you can also have more or less like integration to AWS services. We saw how just using IoT, we could already connect to AWS services like SNS and do some things. That's how Ground Station is also, you can also connect Ground Station to like S3, EC2, SageMaker, and do more things, right? Mission planning, scheduling capabilities. That's one of the reasons you need satellite data, right? Because you want to get that data. But sometimes also those data, it's a lot. It takes a lot of processing power for you to make meaning from that data, and that's where AWS comes in, such that the data you're getting from it, it's already you're ready to use it. Real-time data processing and analytics. You saw for IoT, we're doing real-time. You can also do real-time with Ground Station, right? Security and compliance for sensitive satellite data. Yeah, security is part of everything you do it in AWS, right? Whether it's rule, whether it's how data is encrypted, all that is supported, right? Support for various satellite bands and protocols. The point is that ideally, if you wanted to get satellite data, you have to think about your own ground station. But now AWS has you covered in that regard also. Okay. Um, that brings us to the last service we'll be talking about today. So it's really fault injection simulator. And if you're a developer, you're a cloud engineer, maybe you relate with this, but it's a way for you to fake fault in your system. That's just basically what it is. Some people call it I don't know. I like to call it chaos, but it's chaos. If you know chaos, it's just another word for chaos engineering, right? The whole idea is that you can introduce chaos to your system, intentionally introduce chaos to your system, so that you can know how much your system can handle, or an area in your system that you need to improve upon. So it's just basically a chaos engineering service for testing application resilience. That's the word. The resilience there is the word, right? So control, number one, is a controlled, it's like a controlled experiment for fault injection experiment on AWS services. So you have your service already, and you're trying. Sometimes AWS is just cool, everything works, but sometimes you also want to stretch your services and be like, okay, I want to see how resilient my infrastructure is, right? So sometimes maybe you want to spike the CPU, maybe sometimes you want to spike the memory. You can do all those kind of simulations, right? To see if your system is really, really resilient, right? So pre-built actions for common failure scenarios, meaning there are some actions you can already just take advantage of, and safe experimentation with built-in guardrails and stop conditions, meaning there's a point to stop, right? You can't just run it and blow off your machines, right? So experiment templates for repeatable chaos engineering. We're going to see all just now, just what it looks like, but it's very easy to work with, right? So target selection with resource tagging and filtering, CloudWatch integration for monitoring, like the impact of your experiments, right? Because if you're trying to test CPU spike, there has to be a place where you can see, how that is, reflecting, right? IAM integration, everything is obviously IAM in AWS for secure control access to your experiments. And then integration with a lot of AWS services like EC2, ECS, EKS, RDS. So if you ever think of you want to introduce faults into your system to test your resilience in a controlled manner, that's where the fault injection simulator comes in. So let's see what it looks like. It's not something we want to do, but I still need to show you, right? If you think about it, if you remember, there was a time we had like an EC2 machine, and we were trying to put metric, we were trying to put it in an alarm state, right? But you can actually do that easily with a, what do you call it? With a you can actually do that easily with like a fault injector, and like you can just inject faults to actually do that kind of scenario, right? So you can see, for example, there is like AZ. So AZ is one. There is EBS is another. There is cross-region connectivity, right? So, but again, there is really one simple one here that is like EC2 stress. So let's see what that one is all about. So the whole idea is that you can actually do CPU EC2 stress CPU, right? If you remember, we had like a CPU utilization set at 80, but we had to manually um, put it in that state, right? But here you can actually use the FIS service, which is the fault injector service, to injection service, to actually stress your EC2 such that you can spike the CPU, right? So the whole idea is that you can do more or less like explore impact of increased CPU utilization on your EC2 based application, right? If you have like processes set up, you just want to see how it's going to behave. Will your system still function normally? What is going to happen? Will alarms be sent? Will people be notified? You can do all that using like a stress test, right? Cool. People have a way they do this thing. So just so you know, I think I always mention it. It's not like the cloud. The cloud is not like many of the things you see in the cloud. You can do stress tests on your own, right? On your own without having to use what the AWS infrastructure gives you. But if you ever want to use the AWS infrastructure, there is a service that can help you do that easily. Okay, cool. Um, that's pretty much it about the fault injection simulator that we have inside of AWS FIS. Um, so let's do a recap. We did touch some services today, right? So workspace, fully virtual desktop. Virtual is the keyword there, right? Like I said, if you go to a company, if you were to work for a company, you get a laptop, right? Physical laptop. But you can also use the cloud to get virtual desktop. You don't need to buy physical machines and give to your employees, right? But you can also say, okay, we don't want like a full desktop, but we want to stream a certain set of apps to our employees, right? And then you can have already pre-installed apps, and then your employees can just go through a browser and access those apps, right? They don't need to download it themselves. You've made it available for them and they can use. And then we saw how, Amplify can just simplify your full stack web development and mobile app development, right? You saw how it was very easy from a repo. Boom, we were deployed already. But the good thing about it is that from the things we've learned on this call, we saw that many of the things Amplify was doing were still some of the things we already know, right? So you can imagine the speed Amplify is giving you, but again, you are still relying on the fact that many of the things that so it depends on who is using it. If I'm using Amplify, I'll get more speed because I know that instead of me worrying about many of the underlying things like Dynamo, I can just let Amplify do that for me, right? While I focus on the application I'm building. But again, that's for someone like me. But again, also for people like developers who don't really want to care so much about like what is behind, like they just want to quickly prototype something without worrying so much about like the setting up DynamoDB, setting up Cognito, AppSync, which Amplify will just do that easily for you. We saw how Device Farm could be like a mobile app testing on real devices. You can. It's like AWS is giving you mobile phones for you to test your applications, right? Or test your mobile apps. And then we saw IoT. We did play with IoT on this call. We saw how it works, how you can do even pop sub, you can do pub only, sub only, and then you can set bidirectional. I know we didn't really use a real sensor device, but honestly, a sensor device is basically a device that is running something, right? That can connect. So if you had like a device that can do that same connection that we showed in CloudShell, everything is going to work as is, right? Pinpoint is no longer a thing, but it usually, it is still next year. But just so you know, you don't need to focus so much again on it because AWS is phasing it out for other services, right? But it used to be the tool for customer engagement. If you wanted to send campaigns, you wanted to send, rich emails and all that, you could use Pinpoint to just, manage that your engagements, the entire life cycle of that engagement, right? And messaging. And then we saw Ground Station can do satellite data processing and communication. AWS will make that easy for you. Instead of you going through the hassle of trying to set up your own ground station or do all that, AWS, you can just rely on AWS to get the data that you need. And then the last thing I introduced was chaos engineering, basically. So resilience. There are so many areas in your application you want to test them. Sometimes you want to test like if one easy goes down. We've talked about multi-easy sometimes, but sometimes you really want to test if one easy goes down, will my business stop working? You really want to test end to end. Remember, you have so many things that are deployed multi-easies, and sometimes you really want to test if one easy is completely down, will traffic still be able to get to the last point in that traffic? So that's one of the things you can do with chaos engineering. And like I've mentioned, you can, if you wanted to, come up with your own process to do that. But there's a tool in AWS that you can use and that can make that easy for you. Okay, we've said a lot. I mean, so these services, like I said, I didn't know how to group them, but I just had to just put them here. Some of those services that, depending on what you end up doing, you may not use them that much. You may not. Amplify is obviously one of those things you use. Some companies use workspaces for their employees. IoT is obviously something I'm very passionate about. Device Farm, obviously, if somebody is like QA or you have like an organization that is doing a lot of app, you guys are building app, you want to test, you can use Ground Station. Obviously, not a lot of people. It just depends. If you are dealing with satellite data, you may not see that. But chaos engineering is obviously something that we all need. We all need, especially if your infrastructure is in the cloud. So it just depends. Like you've seen all the time I talk about AWS. Sometimes some services you use them more, some you use them less, right? But they are there um, to meet your needs, to make sure that if you need them, you can get them, right? So that brings us to the end of the class.